it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a crazy, research article to show you that the track and field world is heavily, there's a lot of athletes and coaches of color involved in the track and field community, right? And Milesplit and Flotrack have profited off of those athletes and coaches.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's Running Through podcast. I'm Justin Horniger. Before we get into my interview with Kyle, I just wanted to kind of address a couple things. You haven't seen a podcast on this page, on the feed, in a little while. Because I have a couple episodes that are in the tank that just don't feel right releasing under these current circumstances. I just don't think they're very topical. I don't think they're necessarily what you guys want to hear right now. I think in general, the national conversation within the running community, especially, we're just talking about inclusivity. We're talking about how we can be better at being anti-racist. That's kind of what I'm talking with Kyle about today in regards to Milesplit and Flotrack and why he left those organizations. So I want to take time to kind of discuss it, that with, at least in the immediate future and going forward with kind of the episodes I bring to you, I want them to be involved in that conversation and to be kind of superficial about running right now just doesn't feel right. I'm sure it will in the future. Not everything is going to have to be super serious going forward, but as of right now, that's kind of where I stand with the podcast and the episodes I'm going to put out in, the next couple weeks at the very least. I have some good interviews lined up. We have some podcasts rolling out. It's not going to be radio silence from me, that's for sure. If you want to know kind of my thoughts on everything, you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HornikerJustin. I've talked about this a lot, but in general, I think there's a lot more that we can do in the running community to just be more inclusive. If you listen to my Run with Maud episode, if you listen to my interview with Corey Waltering last episode, where actually Corey, side note, is about 2 or 3 days away from beating the fastest known time at the Ice Age Trail, assuming everything still goes right. Anyway, if you listen to that episode, there's a lot of things that we're talking about just about inclusivity and what we as a community need to do better going forward. Now, what I get into Kyle about today is just talking about if you are a leading member in a niche group, Flotrack, Milesplit, are a leading member in running. Milesplit with high school running, Flotrack with collegiate running. I think me and Kyle actually talked about this afterwards. I don't think it's actually in the episode, but I think about the amount of time that I spent as a young high school kid going on Milesplit, as a young collegiate guy going on Flotrack and Let's Run. It influenced a lot of my attitudes towards the sport. And if you would use those platforms to better support Black athletes in our community, that Black athletes that we frankly build the sport off of, it would go a long way to just building a more inclusive environment. A lot of times we say running doesn't discriminate, but frankly that's tired, because obviously it does. If you look at the number of runners, if you look at just the general attitude towards Black runners in the community. And if you talk to Black runners, they'll all say that they've experienced some sort of, whether outright racism or inherent racism. Mariel Hall had a great article. So it's definitely something that we need to address. It's something that we definitely need to keep pushing on. I just felt like I needed to say that before we get into this interview, because this interview is about Kyle's experiences and why he chose to leave, but it touches on a lot of those topics, and we kind of get into that. So I don't want you guys to be blindsided with that going forward. You always have the guarantee for me that I won't shy away from this conversation. I've talked about my beefs with Flotrack in the past, but that is not what brought this on. More or less, it's about being the leader in a niche community, and you cannot be silent. People talk about how they don't need brands to necessarily make statements, and I kind of agree with that at a level. Like, we shouldn't necessarily have to be led through our social attitudes by brands, but if you're a Black person, if you're a Black athlete that is seeing everything that's happened post George Floyd happen, and you've lived your whole life, and now we're on this wave of support and inclusivity, and everyone's making statements, and then you see your favorite brand not make a statement. It really makes you kind of think, well, why not? So when you look at what Flotrack and Milesplit had done originally, it makes you think.
Kyle, if you really could explain yourself a little bit on who you are, what you do, introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm I kind of a jack of all trades, really. I started with Milesplit in 2017. I was doing, I was a stateside editor with Milesplit there. I've been coaching, since 2016. Before that, I ran for Maryville, Division II at Maryville, and I just been, I was coaching at Francis Howell High School in 2016 and 2017. Had some pretty good athletes there, and just because they've always been a really amazing program. And then I started working with Milesplit, and then I was doing that for like 3-4 months, and then they decided to bring me down to Austin to work at National at Flow Sports headquarters. I was doing results down there, doing stats for like 35 different states. So I was posting, mostly just posting stats and results, every day. I'd wake up at 10. I'd wake up at 10 in the morning, right? That's to start my day, because I was up until 2 a.m. the night before, just doing stats for like California and Washington and the West Coast states. So anyway, I was doing all that stuff, and then I moved back, and since then I got my graduate degree in Master's of Education in School Counseling.
Nice.
And I've been coaching. I'm the head cross country coach and assistant track coach at Fort Zumwalt East, the head boys coach at Fort Zumwalt East High in St. Peters. And I was, what was it? Oh yeah, now I'm elementary school counselor at in Wentzville, in the Wentzville School District.
Nice. I always like these conversations because there are a lot of like Missouri runners who go way back that have like really gotten involved in the sport. So like from that like core group, we've all just kind of like stayed in the sport and everything. So it's cool to see how everyone has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be coaching in the fall still, or what's your kind of plans for?
Yeah. Luckily, elementary schools, they get out later than high schools, a lot later. Luckily, I got hired at one of the schools in the area that gets out like the earliest.
Nice.
So I'm still gonna be coaching in the fall at Zumwalt East. So I'm working in Wentzville and I'm coaching in Zumwalt. So this is how it falls. It's how the cards fall.
It works out. So Owen, we wanted to talk today because of your kind of decision to stop working with Milesplit. What can you kind of like speak to that? Because I know there may have been some other things involved. Like what was like your mindset to stop working with Milesplit at this point?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've been working for Milesplit now for the better part of the past 3 years.
Yeah.
It's, so I've been pretty heavily involved in not just working as a stateside editor, but also on the national side. So I've been in the belly of the beast, and I think a lot of people,
you're in it.
Yeah, I was in it, I was it. I was on Milesplit Live, which is the live show. I was on there regularly towards, like the second half of my year there in 2018. And, so I was working with the national guys. I would sit in every Tuesday. We had a company-wide meeting, and Mark Floriani would come down and he'd talk. And so I was in it. I was in Austin in the mix. And and that was the thing too. Like, so being there, I see a lot of people who would talk about just how crappy for the sport Milesplit and Flotrack are, just because of the subscriptions and the paywalls. And I know you feel pretty strongly about that.
I may have said a thing or two about it in my day.
Yeah, and you know what, and that's fine. Because the thing too is like, in the back of my mind, I've never been in it for the money, right? Yeah. Like that's never been my thing. My thing, because I guess it's just a personal anecdote. When I was in high school, I wasn't a world beater by any means. I was a high 16s guy, and we raced on a lot of really tough courses. Because that's just how it was in St. Louis. I mean, it's gotten a lot. It's gotten so much flatter. I mean, I know more than most just how much easier these courses have gotten over the years and how much faster the sport's gotten. talent wise, and just because the courses are getting, just easier. So I never really got the one time I ever appeared on Milesplit was when I won Sioux Passage. And I got lucky because the Everetts were pacing their teammates. So I probably wouldn't have won if it wasn't for that.
All good. Sioux Passage itself is
yeah. And that, I didn't get recruited, I got two schools that knocked on my door, and I got told I could walk on at SLU. And this was back in 2010 when they weren't that great. I'm just going to say they were not that great. And they told me that I could walk on. I was like, whatever. That fall I ran 9:30, or that spring I ran 9:31 on the 2 mile. I was like, how many schools would want a 9:31 2 miler right now? Probably a lot. Yeah. But I ended up going Division III at Milliken because that was the only school that really recruited me besides Missouri Southern. So when I got started on Milesplit, I was like, man, there are so many kids out there who just don't get, who don't get recruited because nobody knows who they are. Nobody sees it, especially now because profiles are behind paywalls. Mm-hmm. You got to pay to just see what some kid ran, and what their PRs are and where they rank.
I never really put that together, but yeah, I didn't get recruited a lot either. I was a little bit of a late bloomer, but I broke 2 in the 800. And sure. Usually but I got recruited by Fontana and Webster. Those are the only 2 schools that reached out to me. So it's
and you start to think these days we have people on social media, on Twitter, who are just like, you have to run 151 if you want to get recruited at all. And it's like, okay, pump the brakes, man. Now there are so many schools. There's NAIA, there's Division III, there's Division II. You don't have to go to a Power 5, Mizzou, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, whatever. You don't have to go to those schools. I went to Maryville. I loved it. I loved my experience there. I got better. I was with a great coach. And that's the thing too. I could have gone to Maryville, but I was like, I don't want to go there. I want to go to Division I. I want to go to FLU, blah, blah, blah. Or I want to go somewhere else, Yeah. So my goal when I started working with Milesplit was to highlight as many athletes as I possibly could. So with that roundabout way to say I was never in it for the money. And I think one of the things going on with Milesplit and Flotrack is it kind of seems like they're in it just for the money. And you see that a lot when, like I said, rankings are behind paywalls and athlete profiles are behind paywalls. I got to pay for a subscription just to see what I ran, or I don't have to pay for the results, but I have to pay to see my progression and things like that. And that's why it always got really hard for me. In the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, you should totally subscribe to Milesplit because that was my company. That's who I was working for. That's who paid my bills. Yeah. But in the back of my mind, I was like, man, you shouldn't have to pay for this stuff, man. This should just be out there in the world. But then, so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that, but then on the other side, I'm like, it's business. They're trying to make their money. That's how they make their money. That's it. But, so, that was part of it. It just got to the point where I was like, I don't think I can be a part of this where, it's just we're making people pay for this stuff at this point. And, but I guess the biggest kicker, and, obviously with everything going on right now, there's a massive Black Lives Matter movement going on right now. And, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a crazy, research article to show you that the track and field world is heavily, there's a lot of athletes and coaches of color involved in the track and field community, right? And Milesplit and Flotrack have profited off of those athletes and coaches for a very long time, with races, with workout Wednesdays, with rankings, with, and you can look at the rankings if you have a subscription. You can look at the rankings and you can see just how many athletes of color populate the top end of those rankings, and just how much Milesplit and Flotrack have benefited from these athletes. Yeah. And how much, I guess too, it's a two-way street too. When I do write an article about an athlete, and they get noticed and they get recognized, they benefit from us too, just as much as we benefit from them, and that's fine. But man, this is massive network, and all these athletes that and all these coaches that and all these people you could be reaching out to and saying, help me tell your story and help me, amplify your voice and elevate your voice. and Milesplit made a decision in Flotrack not to do that. And that's what really got me. I mean, so what happened was, I guess on last week, Ryan Staples, he's a former cross country and track athlete at Fort Zumwalt West High School in O'Fallon. He organized a peaceful protest in O'Fallon. It started from Fort Zumwalt West. It walked to the police department / municipal court / justice center in O'Fallon. About a mile and a quarter, came back. It was about 2.5 mile walk, completely coordinated with police. Totally peaceful. Everything was great. It was totally well done. He's gotten so much good press from it. He's been on podcasts now. He's been on the Today Show with Hoda and like the national, people
awesome.
are picking up on it.
Yeah.
And like John Legend sent a message to them. Like that's how much good press this has gotten. And people are like uplifted. Like an 18-year-old kid said, I am, going to organize a peaceful protest. And he did. And that's what people are calling for too, right?
Yeah.
Like, everybody's like, oh, these protests are getting all violent. And then like somebody actually does organize most of them have been peaceful, but that's for another talk.
Don't need to get into that.
But yeah, we don't have to get into that. But somebody does organize a peaceful one that you've been calling for, and we're not going to highlight that. That just doesn't sit right with me, So I wrote an article about it because it was about an athlete, a former athlete, who's doing something great in his community. It's not just about running to me. It's about people who are doing great things in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Athletes, track and field, cross-country athletes who are doing great things in their community. So I decided to highlight that, especially for this kid who deserves it, who deserves to be highlighted by that. And so I wrote it, I posted it Tuesday morning, and it gets taken down. They take it down, and they tell me, we're not doing that. We're sticking to sports. We're not going to make a comment on that. This is 8 days, mind you, 8 days after George Floyd's death. So they've had plenty of time. They've had plenty of time to come up with something to say. And finally I said, you know what, let's say it. And this is also a day after Flotrack posted a talk with, I don't know what they did, but the national guys at Flotrack who I know, and Gordon and Lincoln, who are good friends of mine, they did a podcast episode about, athletes of color who are in their experiences with racism. They did it literally Monday. And then Tuesday I write this article and it gets taken down. What's up with that? But the real kicker was this was Blackout Tuesday. The real kicker was that at about 3:00 in the afternoon, Milesplit and Flotrack decided that they were going to post Blackout Tuesday on their social media platforms, literally 4 hours after I had just written this article and they gotten pulled down and they had told me that they're not going to do something about it. They're not going to talk about it. What?
That's quite a quick.
What? So what happened? What was up with this flip-flop? And then at 10:30 at night, they post a We Stand With You article that's got 100 words in it that basically is just a bunch of platitudes. And then that was it. And there was an interview with Carl Lewis, about his experiences of being racially profiled. And then they reposted Miles Simmons, who's a runner from Georgia, who was talking about running while black. In the wake of the Ahmaud Arbery stuff. And that's it. They actively censored me. They actively censored another contributor that I know, who had a story that was coming up that he wanted to write. And that was it for me. That was it. I was like, I can't, we can't be a part of this. I can't be a part of that. I'm sitting here, I'm trying to amplify Black voices in the community, and you're going to actively censor me like that. And for what? What's the gain from that?
Why do you think they were so quick to retweet other, why do you think they're so quick to retweet athletes, but not putting, is it just not wanting to put their name on anything as far as come from the website itself? Or?
I think it's gotta, I had the official email that they sent me, and I don't want to read it word for word because that would I don't think that'd be good, but there was an official email that was sent out to everybody, not to me though, because I'm just a contributor. I haven't been working for Milesplit for 3 years or anything like that. So, don't just, send the messenger to me. But it was something like, we just don't want to, we want to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row before we say something, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. But you've had 8 days to do that. Runner Space was sending out messages, 3 days before, maybe Thursday or Friday, in May. Runner's World had posted an article with Marielle Hall, which got a lot of good buzz. It was a great article. They did that the day before, Monday or Sunday or wherever that was. And then this guy, I don't know, this coach of Fast University. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I don't know what his name is. It's on his thing, but I guess I could look it up. But he sent a message to Flotrack, and he said basically like, we don't want to see any more old race videos. We don't want to see any more throwbacks. We don't want to see top 50 lists. Like, we need unity and support, and we want to see, we want you guys to say something. He said, your silence and disregard is not helping the people who support you. I mean, this is a guy that has 67,000 followers on Instagram. He sent this message to Flotrack.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
And you know what the message back that he got? Thanks for getting in touch with us, Fast University. If you need help with account billing or tech support issues, please visit support.flowsports.tv where you will find helpful articles or can send us an email. And he posted that to his story. Like, what? and so after that, all of a sudden, here's Blackout Tuesday. Here's We Stand With You. Here's all this stuff.
It's a bit disjointed.
I wonder.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, it was just a total mess. Like, at first they're telling everybody that we're not going to touch it. We're not touching that. We're just going to stick to sports. And then they're actively censoring their contributors. And then next thing that they do is they post about Blackout Tuesday, which, both sides of the spectrum. There was the unity spectrum, and then there's also this doesn't do anything. Like, this is just a platitude.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't help anything, which, I mean, I get both sides of the article, or both sides of the spectrum there, or the argument. And then they just made a post at 10:30 at night that says we stand with you. And like, it seems kind of like bare minimum. And it's like, I don't know. I think people in the community want to see like action. There isn't that like, they want to see something done. Like, words are kind of empty at this point, but like, what are you doing? You have a big platform. What are you doing to promote? We have a lot of Black athletes in the sport who historically have not gotten their fair share of the press unless they're like winning gold medals, So
right. A lot of like my whole thing is that there are a lot of semi like on kind of that elite / next elite level that I feel like because they're kind of a minority in the sport, they don't get the attention that they deserve, and something that we don't do enough of. Yeah, and I will say too, when I was down there in Austin, that's when the big story about Tyrese Cooper broke out, where he got arrested. I think it was for whatever he got arrested for. And that morning we woke up and it was, what? Holy cow! Tyrese Cooper got arrested, and we have to pump it out we gotta put it out on the site. We have to go live on Periscope and talk about it. We have to put it on Instagram. We got to put it on Twitter. We got to put it on Flotrack. We got to put it on everything. Tyrese Cooper got arrested. Yeah. Why? What? Like, you're basically, I get it. Like, it's news. It's news about a track athlete, a high profile athlete, a national record holder. Sure. I get it. It's news. And that was kind of my argument, because a lot of people were like, why are we amplifying this message about another young black man getting arrested? Why are we doing this? Why are we pumping it out so much? And I was like, well, it is news. I was on that side. But now I'm thinking about it, like, we were so quick to just pump out Tyrese Cooper getting arrested. Just burst it out there. Just everybody needs to know that we had it first. But when it comes to, a massive movement going on right now, a massive, massive movement, the biggest civil rights movement we have ever seen in United States history, we can't continue to be pumping out content from all these people that we have and saying, we stand with you. We want to hear from you. We want to be bold. Yeah. We want to make a bold statement. And if we lose some subscribers along the way, like, they don't deserve to be in the track community anyway, because more than likely they're working with athletes of color, or they're teaching athletes of color. I don't care how rural your community is. I don't care, where you are. You're most likely working with somebody of color. And if you can't stand with them now, then, that's tough. That's tough for me. So that was my whole thing. It's like, if you can't stand that I am promoting black athletes, like, all right, fine, just whatever. And you're hearing that a lot from a lot of different people too, like all over, just think of any brand that's putting it out there, anybody that's putting it out there that's saying, like, we stand with you, but Black Lives Matter. And
And then people are in the comments going, you just lost a customer. It's like, bye, like, see ya. Like, we don't want you wearing our brand. We don't want you, drinking out of our coffee mugs or, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't want you supporting our brand if you're not going to support the people who might work with us, who might, patronize our businesses, who might be in our families. Like, we don't support that. So that's what I'm like, we should be at the front lines saying, like, we are with you and we want to tell your stories. Like, and we want to, we want to tell your stories, not just as track athletes, but as people.
Yeah.
Like and that just didn't sit right with me that, we're actively censoring our contributors who want to do that stuff. And that was the final straw for me. Like, there's been a lot of, the ball's been rolling for me to get out of Milesplit, and it's finally just like, I'm done, man. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's a good stand to take, like, at that point, especially something that's like against your values so much that, like, it's the right time to do it. It's upsetting because I don't think they realize like how much their platform means, especially like people our age that like grew up with like Flotrack and Milesplit as like our main source of like running news, because they like were our generation for a while. Just to see them like drop the ball so much, and definitely,
and especially in high school and in college, like there is nobody more involved in the high school running community than Milesplit. Nobody. And I will die on that hill. When people ask me what Milesplit is, I say it's the leading, publication for high school cross country and track and field in the country.
I'd agree with that.
And it's true. And Flotrack is up there in terms of collegiate. I would say maybe even the leader as well, just because of some of the deals that they've been able to secure with, NCAA, national championships and the races that they broadcast and things like that. So, to stand there and not, and just kind of stay on the sidelines and take the wait and see approach. I mean, it's just like, what are we doing, man? We got to be out there.
In your mind, is there anything they can do at this point to like have a redemption arc, so to speak, to like make right on all this?
I don't know, man. I feel like it's too late.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I feel like everything at this point would be reactionary to
just reacting to the negative press as opposed to
being called out, and that's what it seems like. Like you did not actively go out there and take a stand, and because that's a lot of people think like the statements that are being sent out right now are reactionary to the times. It's like, why wouldn't you send out this message 3 months ago? Like, oh, you're just sending it out now just because this is such a big deal. It's like, well, people want to hear it. Like, people are actively sending messages to brands and saying, what is your stance? Whose side are you on right now? Like, are you on the right side of history right now? Or are you gonna take a stand and say, no, we don't support this, all lives matter? Like, who cares about Black lives? Like, no, that's not what people are looking for right now. And honestly, like, it would have been really weird to see that statement come out 3 months ago. Like, we stand with the Black community. Like, okay, yeah, that'd have been great, but everybody was like,
why? What's going on? Yeah.
But now is when people want to hear it. Like, now is when people are like, yes, like, this is a great movement. I'm so glad this is coming out. I'm so glad this is happening. And we support you guys. We stand with you. Like, that's what it should have been from the beginning. How hard is that? How hard would that have been? I don't know. So I think at this point, I saw today, like, there was a tweet with, where they took somebody else's tweet about, athletes of color in the track community and like how track is, such a melting pot and everybody blends together, blah, 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 blah. And they just put like a clap emoji. Like, and at this point, it's just like, they're going to like trickle out little things here and there. But there could have been so much more that they could have been doing and that I could have helped them do, because I have this network of athletes that I know too, that I could have been pumping stuff out here in Missouri and just.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to like the higher ups just like not getting it, like not even the people like you that worked at Milesplit, worked at Flotrack. I think it's like more or less the people in charge that like don't understand like that you need to be the one putting out the content. You can't just like amplify others when you have this platform that like has been seen as the leading part, like leading page in our sport. You can't just be like, oh, here's what somebody else said, we support it. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not going to sit here and say that Milesplit is racist. Like, I'm not going to make that statement.
I think it's just
I would never do that.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, I think it was the priorities were not, their priorities weren't in check. Like they weren't in line. The priorities were, we need to, it feels like, to me at least, and maybe I'm wrong, but at least in my opinion, it feels like the priorities were, we need to stick to our message and our platform, which is, I don't know, top 50 lists, and make sure that we keep our subscribers and keep them and not try and make a political stance, which is totally like they've been doing for years. There was an article about a runner in Ohio who got disqualified for wearing a hijab. There was an article recently, like a month ago, about I think it was the Connecticut Supreme Court ruling that the CIAC in Connecticut has to abide by transgender athletes and their gender identity in the athletic system. So that's a stance. The hijab article is a stance. I literally wrote an article last month about an athlete in Michigan who was training through Ramadan. Like, these are stances that we're taking in this bubble, like that we are
in the same sphere of influence. That
we are inclusionary, that we are going to talk about these sort of things, and that we are going to amplify these stories. So like, why was it so hard for them to take the stance here? And I think it was a bottom line, sort of stance, like, how is this going to affect our bottom line? How is this going to affect, are we going to lose subscribers? How are people going to be in the comments going, you just lost a customer? I'm also like, that's just how it seems to me. Because what I'm thinking about is, if I'm in the front office and I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I feel like we should really say something. What is there to lose? What is there to lose? And everybody's like, well, hold on, let's wait and see. Like, what are we waiting and seeing for? This wasn't going away. Yeah. So why couldn't they have stood up in the forefront and been on the front lines with everybody and said, we're going to make a bold statement. We're going to be the Ben and Jerry's of the running community, and we're going to say, we're with you guys. Like, this is. No, it's not that hard.
That's definitely it. It's like trying to have a cost benefit analysis of something that like is a societal change. Like this, it just is. Like at this point, like the public is moving so quickly on this that like if you're even like silent on the matter, you're gonna get swept under. So, yeah, completely agree.
And I mean, and it's your prerogative. Like, it's Milesplit's prerogative. Like, they can do whatever they want, and they can stand idly by, and they can stay silent. I've seen people post stuff like, just because I'm not posting and saying stuff on social media doesn't mean I'm not with you, and that's fine. Like, that's great. But you are you're basically a running conglomerate. Like, you need to, you can't just stand by. Like, if you're just some guy, who's got 100 followers on Twitter, sure, if you want to stay quiet and you don't want to make posts about it, that's fine. And you want to sign petitions and make donations in your own time and maybe go to a couple of rallies, that's fine. But you are a national, an international, company that needs to say something, But like I said, like, that's their prerogative, that's their thing. They just lost me on that. Like, I can't be with that.
No, I agree 100%. I think it looks strong on you that you can like stand up with your beliefs to like take that as the last straw. So cool. Well, I appreciate you talking with me about it, Kyle. I know it's not the easiest thing to talk about, but
yeah, I mean, it's, I gotta watch my words, but I'll say, like, I don't wish any ill will towards Milesplit or Flotrack. I don't think, I have a lot of friends, still a lot of friends who are still there, and they've been speaking up on their own time. Just because they're sticking with Milesplit, they're sticking with their jobs, doesn't mean, I'm going to speak ill about them or anything like that. I've talked to a few of them. But yeah, I just think drop the ball. That's plain and simple. I just think the ball was dropped, and I wasn't. Yeah, I'm gonna go on my own time and do my own thing.
Good for you. Are you starting up a blog on your own? I know you kind of talked about that. Like, what are your plans as far as like your writing goes?
Yeah, I mean, I started one up, and it's been kind of hard to write, on my own time at this point, just because the platform isn't as massive as I had, and it's not as easy to get the message out there as before. And, and like I said, like I was never in it for there was a point in time where I thought maybe this would give me some fame and glory, but that was kind of that was an older, a younger Kyle who was a little bit more naive about it, and who wasn't, who didn't have his priorities in check. But I guess I'm not in it for the money, really. I'm in it to highlight athletes, and that's because that's what we should be doing. So I made this blog. It's just my name. It's kyledeeken.squarespace.com. It's got a couple of pieces on there so far. Two articles I really wanted to put up on Milesplit at least. One of them is the article about Ryan Staples and his peaceful protest, which got a lot of views, I will say. So that was kind of interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then there's a poem that was written by Courtney Williams, who is an athlete of color, a black athlete from Near East Hall High School. She wrote a poem called "Am I Next?" Extremely profound, especially because she recited it too and made a video of it, which is also there. Awesome. It'll get you. It'll pull at your heartstrings a little bit if you watch it.
Well, I'll put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out for sure.
Yeah, and so beyond that, I don't know. I've reached out to a couple of people, just trying to figure out what exactly we want to do. I don't know. I'll probably do some writing, once cross country season comes around. But for the most part, it's just at this point it's just a hobby. It's free content for anybody who wants to read it. And and the thing too is like you put out an article about somebody, and then they take it and they share it to whoever they want to share it to, and they market it out. They can use it as a reference letter, later on, like, hey, look at this article that somebody wrote about me, even if it's just on a blog. So that's kind of what the goal is with that.